All right. Um, most of my stories on this channel, um, are very full of energy and not serious. But this one is gonna be serious. I don't even want to say it because to the judgmental and ignorant brain, this won't make sense to you. However, I'm sure everyone has heard of creepypastas, meaning like online fictional stories. Well, there's one online fictional story that I took interest in for almost since the day I discovered it. It was The Rake. Um or Skinwalkers to be more exact. Um I have had experiences, so if the suspense hasn't already built, then here it goes. So, back in 2012 was the first time I ever truly experienced anything. Um, I discovered this, what I believed at the time to be fictional creature, on the internet. And what's really weird about this creature is it will draw you in ways that you couldn't even begin to imagine, and I will get into that further into the video. So even though about 90% at this point of my brain said this is bullshit, what's really strange is when I looked into the eyes on the computer, I was just strangely drawn to it. Very weird, right? You would think, oh, Shane, you're a weirdo. And I thought I was for a long time. A long time. Before I go any further, I have in my life taken a mild amount of psychedelics. And I know what it's like to hear and see things that aren't there on a substance, not while I'm sober. So, with that being said, I feel it necessary to clear that right now. So we're going back to 2012. I was in middle school. It was the weekend. I can't remember if it was a Friday night, Saturday night. Don't know. All I know is I didn't have to go to school the next day, and I felt more than free. So, at the time, I had a best friend who has recently gone astray, and his name was Barrett, which is kind of a weird name for a person. Like, let me fix my back here. Barrett can be a name for a dog, which is odd because my dog's name was also Barrett, who, God rest his soul, has passed away last year. Him and I explained the rake to him, right? Even myself thinking it wasn't quite real. And he was like, that's bullshit, or whatever. He was talking it down, basically. and the sun was beginning to set, and I have always been drawn to sunsets. And I grabbed a football, which nothing, I mean, some people do. I mean, I've changed as far as like my energy, but my hobbies, I've been the same since I was probably born. I've liked the same stuff: Legos, music, football, and oddly enough, camping. But I don't think I'm going to go camping alone again. I'll go with someone else. I will never go into the woods at night alone again. So, and this shit gets weird. It does, because it's odd, but I think it's fascinating, but still very scary. I mean, this shit, I've spoken to let's just say people I'm close to, because I am close with them, but names are never mentioned ever in my stories. And this is a very sensitive topic for me. So we're walking down my aunt's trails. As some of you know by my stories, or even just know me as a person, have or know that I lived with my aunt from 6th grade until 12th grade when I graduated, and then so basically 6 years. And this was about, I'd say, a year into that tenure. And we're walking down the trails, and we get to, there's a part of the trail where it goes from an open area with grass on both sides to bushes, and then to an overhanging like trees, where the trail goes under some trees, and it's kind of shady. And we hear the bush rustle. Now, we had just gotten done researching this creature and had just gotten done talking about it. So understandably, we're children, right? We think, oh shit, that might actually be it. And I can't lie. My mom passed away. I say this on my past mother. I say this on everything I love, including my belief in God. That I saw a hand that looked abnormally large and had long, almost like, not claws, but like, it was just, you can't even describe it really, except for the eyes. But I didn't see the eyes that time. But what I did notice about this arm was it was gray, not peach, not white, not brown, not yellow, not orange, but solid gray. And it reached its arm, I guess, out at us and kind of like started to lunge. And I mean, I just turned and said, run. And by the way, this is not for attention, by the way. This is just for me to get this out of my head, because I've had experiences. We ran and ran and ran and did not look back. Now, I'll give you advice at the end of the video if you want to survive something like this. And what I just said right there about the running, that's a no-no, but I'll get into it later. Based on what I noticed. It'll all make sense at the end of the video. So, 8 years goes by. 8 whole years go by before I experience anything again. Correction, 7 years. In 2019, I had a horrific habit of staying up all night and then going to school the next day exhausted. And it happened to be one of those nights. Except because I was being such a fucking dick, my aunt, who had at the time the title to my car because I was underage, took my car from me and told me she was going to call the police if I ever took it again, because I kept taking it even after she told me not to. So I was still stubborn and decided to walk instead. And it was cold. Now, to get to my buddy's house, I used to live where my aunt's house is in a farm town in rural New York called Leroy. And to get to his house, where my aunt's house was pretty rural, but where his house was unbearably rural, like creepy at night. But because I had gotten so confident and had lost, not belief, but understanding of this thing, I walked all the way there with no issues, all the way to his house. Now, on the way to his house, there's a long stretch of road that is rarely traveled, still paved, but rarely traveled, woods on both sides, no lights, none. I was a broke motherfucker who could only charge his phone enough to have fun through the night, and usually when on my way home, my phone would be dead. And I also brought a speaker with me as well. And this gets creepy. So I get to his house, and I was sober the whole way there. I smoked a lot of weed with him. And keep in mind, this dude had already graduated and was part of the service. He had been in the military. He was a bit older, but a cool guy nonetheless. So I'm drinking with this guy. After I smoked the weed, I started to drink. I was fucked up as hell. And both him and I and his little brother, who I was going to school with, which is how I met him, started to pick up on everything I love. Started to pick up on a sound coming from the woods, and it started to gradually grow a little louder. It would repeat every 5 seconds and sounded like almost like something was in pain, but it didn't sound human. It sounded like a horrifying agony, like screams of agony, but not like the screams of agony that somebody's actually hurt, like kind of mocking screams of agony. It's going to get weirder. So my speaker dies first. And his mom was a mean woman. Let's just say it nicely. She told him that if he didn't come back in the house, she was going to lock him out of the house. He looks at me, a man who was in the military, looks at me and goes, I quote, "I feel sorry for you that you have to walk in that direction." And I was like, okay. And I don't know what's wrong with me either, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to stay in my dude's lawn when his mom was already pissed at him, because I would have pissed her and him off. So we sit out there for another 10 minutes. Speaker's dead. Now I can really hear it because the music isn't playing. Now I can hear it clear as day. And at this point, we're just letting the fire die. He goes back in the house, and I'm standing out there with a phone that is at one. I swear to God, I remember that one was very vivid because it was terrifying. My phone was at 1%, and I was like, "Oh my fucking God!" Because I don't know if anyone knows, or at least with the Androids, I've never had an iPhone except for one time in my life when my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, gave me one and asked for it back when we broke up, and I gave it back to her because I'm not an asshole to women. But even though they can be frustrating, but we love them. Anyways, I begin to walk towards this whale, basically. And sure enough, my phone dies. So I have no source of light, no source of any sort of comfort. I had no one with me. I'm walking down a road that has barely any traffic and there's woods on both sides and no lights. It's almost pitch black, but it's so dark, in fact, I can see. Still, at least where I'm kind of walking. So this road kind of goes around a corner at the end of it before it gets to another street light. The only thing I had to keep me calm was one cigarette, and I was so petrified, I didn't even want to smoke it. So at one point, it got so close to me that I was convinced, because I didn't really believe in the creature at the time because I had lost belief in it, that at any moment I thought, like, I was trying to write it off in my mind as a coyote, or even like a paranoid woman in the woods or something, because that's what it sounded like. It sounded like a witch, but like a really loud one. And it was so close to me at one point, I couldn't believe it. Obviously, I'm still standing here, or, well, sitting here. So I'm still alive. I make it to the end of the road, and I was so shocked. I lit the cigarette under the lamppost and continued my walk. And I could hear it up all the way up until it faded away from my impossible hearing, which was right about at the end of the road that makes a right to get to my aunt's house. That was in 2019. Now, 2020, the year 2020 was, for not only myself, but for almost everyone, was extremely dark. What's really weird about 2020 is, at the time, I was about to start a band. Because you want to hear something weird? I almost failed my 12th grade. And there's other stories about that on my channel. I won't get into it. My favorite lead singer is Philip Anselmo from Pantera. Now, I was about to drop out on my 12th grade year, just like Phil did. And COVID rolled around, meaning I was literally on the verge of starting a band and going out there and doing something huge. And COVID started, meaning everything shut down. I'll never forget March of 2020. Never. And it just sent me right back. Everything I had worked on, everything I had done was gone. But what did happen was I graduated high school, which is crazy. That entire summer, I was a shell. I did nothing. I went nowhere. I posted nothing. Actually, no, I did post, but it was all music that was previously made. It was all pictures off of the internet. I did almost nothing in 2020. So, I don't even want to say it. August of 2020, my aunt is trying to get me to go to college. And so I think, to get the fuck out of this house, I'm going to go to college. And it was just to get away from my family, which is horrible. So I enroll in college. Around late August, I'm not sure the exact date because it's been 4 years. I go to college. I actually do pretty well for the first month. I'm just smoking weed though. And I smoked weed at that point for, age 10 to 20. No, age 10 to 19, about 9 years. So, I was getting a little lazy, I guess, and fried and burnt out. So, I started to falter a little bit. I started to get lazy. I had also somehow convinced my aunt to give me $6,000, which I'm not going to say where it came from, but it is funny to think about, but I really don't have schizophrenia. I don't. I do not see or hear things that aren't there. And some people, it's funny, some people try to write this kind of stuff off as schizophrenia. It's hilarious. So I remember the first psychedelic I ever took in my life was in October of 2020. It was actually, I remember this date though. It was October 14th, a solid month after I turned 19. I didn't have this money at this point, and I was at the Erie Canal with my buddies, and one of them was an acid dealer, and I had no money. They had all pitched in to fill my gas tank for me so I could get home that day, which was already nice enough. So I was really like just upset because acid, believe it or not, gel tabs, like real acid, is hard to get a hold of. So at the time, I wanted to do it. I don't ever want to trip again because it gets worse. But I told the guy, I was like, look, if I jump in the Erie Canal, because it was October, it wasn't to the point where the water was freezing where I would get hypothermia, but it was kind of cold. And it was disgusting. It was like murky and shit. I jumped in it in my underwear and then threw my clothes back on over top of my soaking wet body in exchange for a free tab of acid. And I was given it. And I popped it right then and there. As my buddies are driving me home, I start to see red dots. I start to trip. It's all on my YouTube channel. I trip balls, basically. A week later, I wanted more acid. So I hit the same guy up for more acid. And he still had it. So I got 3 of them this time instead of 1. And I paid for them because I had gotten the money at that point. And it was even weirder than the night before. I had gotten detained and my car got towed because I was getting high in my car. And at that time, in that instance, I was actually high. So that'll let you in on a little shit I'm going through now. A false DWI. But besides the point, which is bullshit anyways. I'm fighting it in court because that's bullshit. A false DWI. That's shot. After I ate these tabs and had a unbelievable acid trip, and that's also on my YouTube channel. I met a group of friends who I'm still friends with to this day. And we stayed in a location in the woods, somewhere in New York, I'll just say, that has shelter. But it's not the kind of shelter you're thinking of. It's a very reclusive, non-inhabitable shelter. But it's a place to retreat to, basically, in the need that you need a mental break, which it actually has since decayed. So we stay there, and now this is where the second part comes in. We stay there, and we're using the video games. We had a gas-powered generator. We were using the video games, charging all our phones, and we had lights on in there, and heat. So after about 2 hours, the generator dies. Or so we think it dies. And that plays in later, just like the story on my channel that I told before. I'm just basically mashing it all into one video because I've experienced some creepy paranormal shit in my life. So everyone else falls asleep, and me, I am not a weirdo, but I do not sleep well in close quarters with other people. When I sleep, I need to be alone. So I'm lying there awake. Unbeknownst to me, my other buddy actually wasn't sleeping either. We were both just sitting there, awake, unaware that either one of us was awake. And I hear what sounds like a very rapid, like almost an inhumane amount of speed. It just runs up to the wall of this structure, right behind where I'm sitting. So basically, if you think about it, look at a side view. I'm sitting on the inside, and this thing, or whatever it was on the outside. I was so startled by it that I almost woke everyone up, but I didn't. I waited to see if I heard movement again, because even though it was so fast, I wasn't convinced it was a person. In the back of my head, I was like, that's got to be a person. Now, the structure we were in was locked at the time. And so I felt kind of safe. I sit there for a straight hour. At this point, it's 4 in the morning. I fall asleep around 5:30, so actually an hour and a half goes by about. And I can recall that the entire time I sat and listened, and I sat and listened closely, nothing moved. Meaning whatever had ran up had either vanished into thin air or didn't move at all. And if you think about it, there's leaves in October. So it was very distinctive, rapid footsteps that came up to the cabin and then didn't move for an hour and a half. It was to a point where I was so exhausted, though, even through my fear, I fell asleep. Now, soon afterwards, the sun rose. And since it was October, the sun rose around, I'd say probably 7 a.m. And I had gotten like 2 hours of sleep. Now, when we checked the surroundings, I instinctively went to look at the generator because I was very curious. The generator had not indeed ran out of gasoline. It had just simply been switched off, which is kind of creepy, dude. It's just eerie to think about shit like that. Like, but it gets even worse. I know what this is now. So, the next, I guess, encounter, as you want to put it, happened in 2022, about a year and a half later, almost 2 years at that time. In 2022, I made the stupid decision to want to smoke weed and drink alcohol, which is both legal, by the way. But I decided to, instead of stay in the places I was, I decided to leave and be homeless. Now, this exact spot I retreated to, well, not retreated to, but was introduced to in October of 2020, was the place I decided to retreat to in 2022. Every single night, during the daytime, because I had no job, I had no money, I had no purpose at all, I would wake up in this structure, leave it, wander around the nearby neighborhoods, see my friends, and get high and drunk all day. Up until the sun completely disappeared from the sky and everyone else got tired and I was left alone at night. I would have to walk not deep into the woods, but probably about maybe 20-minute walk. And when they say, I used to not believe it, but I believe it now. When they say that if you're outside or in a situation that's odd and you feel like you're being watched, there's a good chance that you are being watched. At one particular night, I was walking back and I was really, really like not feeling the right energy. And I at first saw out of the corner of my eye what appeared to be the stereotypical girl in a white dress with black hair. And when I looked in the direction, it seemed to dart away without actually making any sound that time, which is weird. As I continue further down, I make the left to go into the woods off the main trail where the structure was built. And as I'm walking through the trees, I begin to notice like sounds behind me, and when I would stop, I could hear it like stop, but I couldn't see anything. And I would test it. I would walk further, and then just stop abruptly, and I'd hear it stop behind me. But there was it was weird because I'm not a schizophrenic. There's almost nothing there. It's like supernatural. At nighttime, you think that it's just a freak of coincidence or it's some bullshit. But I'll tell you another thing. When you're in a situation like that in the woods at night and you're just sitting there listening to your surroundings, the wind will whisper in a very, let's just say unique fashion. And when I say unique, I mean like telltale, like paranormal. I mean, it was eerie. Like the wind was whistling in a way that it was almost like speaking to me. So that was that, and I eventually got out of that situation that I put myself into. And another 2 years passes until a slew of encounters happens. On February 5th of this year, 2024, my dearest mother, who I don't even want to say it because it kills my soul, but I miss my fucking mom. And I'm still working with lawyers and all the crazy shit to get her jailed, the lady who killed her. Because her name is Linda Kite. An evil witch who does not give a shit about anyone and only claims I have mental illnesses so she can try and get hold of my mother's money. She purposefully stuck me in rehabs so I wouldn't be away from my mother so she could take advantage of her, which is exactly what she did. She got the power of attorney signed without even talking to me. She basically bullied my mother, my 75-year-old mother, into signing a power of attorney, which basically means gave her all control of everything. And because of how crappy our justice system is, how stupid some lawyers can be, it all came together almost like a horrific circumstance where my mother, due to being extorted and isolated by this fucking bitch named Linda Kite, she was exposed to horrific conditions in nursing homes. She, as a result, got ill and had already had health issues as it was. And my mother fucking passed away. And I had to watch it because of this fucking goddamn, excuse the word, I don't mean it like, we should never call a woman this, but there is one woman I will call a cunt, and that is Linda Kite. She is a disgusting, slimy, evil, cold, selfish, psychotic, psychopathic, sociopathic fucking cunt. I have never seen someone so cold in my life to claim that a mom's son and her boyfriend, which was my only father figure, killed her, when in reality, she was the one that killed her. It's That's horrifying. Anyways, my mother is dead. And ever since she died, there has been so many things that I have encountered. The first thing I'll say is the day after she died, there was a sky that was mesmerizing, a sunset that I've almost never seen before. And it was so mesmerizing, and I was so depressed still at the same time, I didn't even photograph it. But what I did start to do when I woke up the next day was I was like, man, my mom would have wanted me to photograph that. Because she knows I had passion for things. I decided to not let my life completely fall apart because I wanted to kill myself, truthfully. Literally, as soon as she passed away, the second we got the phone call, I felt nothing. Nothing. I felt like I wasn't even real. Nothing was real. Life wasn't real. And at the time, I still had problems with my faith in God. I had issues with it. But this is where it gets kind of trippy. And I hate using that word, but it gets a little wild. It is now August 2nd. It's been, 8 minus 2. It's been 6 months since my mom has died. And I've been taking photography since 2017. So that would be 7 years. And you could take all the photography I've taken and scrap it because in just this little time frame here, I have gotten an immaculate, crazy amount of wicked sky pictures, like to the point where it's because it is though. It's like God is painting the sky. It's fucking incredible. But a month after my mom passes away, I begin to inherit her estate. My father, because my mother had passed, had begun to drink very heavily, and I would have to go to the bar with him every day. Not that I don't love him. I love him to death. I'd have to go to the bar with him every day and watch him drink alcohol. And so when I did inherit the money, I said, you know what? The hell with this. I'm going to get out and leave and get my own house. So because I had just lost my mom, because the lawyers who had basically procrastinated and ended up having her die, because it's not all Linda's fault, it mainly is, but the lawyers were also a fucking part to blame. But I was so fed up with everyone bombarding me with all this shit after my mom had just fucking died. Like, literally the day after she passed away, all her friends, all these lawyers are telling me, we gotta go. And they're making me do all the work is the worst part. I did all the work before she died and after. All the work. Nobody else gave a flying fuck. Not even my own father, who loved her. Or so he said he did. I loved my mom. I did it for her. When I found out that Linda had that power of attorney signed, I got myself out of rehab in an effort to save her life. Because that fucking bitch. Fuck you, Linda. Don't worry. And this isn't a threat. It's karma. Your day is coming. You fucking nasty bitch. You smell. You reek. You're a scumbag. And your daughter, Jessica, and Marcus, too, are fucking scum, too. They're prison birds. They're fucking useless. Fucking scumbags. I'm not gonna act like I'm perfect, but they're pretty nasty people. I began to drink when I got away from my father because, well, for one, he was drinking. For two, I have slight alcohol problems, which I actually am doing very well with now. And three, my mom had passed away, and I was trying to feel nothing. I didn't want to feel the grief and pain that I was feeling. So, in the beginning of this whole thing, I stayed in a hotel for a little while before I got my house, as I worked on my own well-being. When I arrived at this hotel for the first day, I was alone. Let me take a drink here. It's apple juice. It is good. I arrived there. I just bought a new truck to help get myself on my feet. And I snapped a photo of the truck with the new phone I also bought. Not that you should be spending money, which I don't, like Linda. But I needed to buy some things to basically advance my life. And so I snapped a photo of my new truck, which it was nighttime, by the way, closed the door to my hotel room, and thought nothing of it. I instinctively am a pretty cool but semi-loud person. I like rock and roll. So I had a speaker. My hotel room was actually at the end of the entire corridor in the beginning of it. So I only had one hotel room on my other wall. The other wall was open to the outside. And there was no one occupying the other side. So I felt comfortable playing music. I received a knock at my door, and because I was trustworthy at the time, kind of starting to trust, humanity and life again, I looked through the people, saw there was what looked to be some normal people, I guess you could call, normal enough, and I opened the door, and they said, "It looks like a party in here." Or not looks like, excuse me. He said, "It sounds like a party in here." And I was like, yeah, I had a joint in my hand. I was smoking weed. I was having a good time. Just chilling out. And he hung out with me, with his girlfriend, for probably like 2 hours. And at the end, I was getting sick of having people in my room because I was still pretty shooken up by everything. And so I asked them to leave. Now, before they left, they said something that caught my attention. They said, "We have mushrooms." And I said, "Cool." Now, at the time, I didn't know too many places anywhere where you could get shrooms. Now I know that you can get them. I know where to get them, and it's not illegal, because I'll just say it's sovereign. But I purchased about 4 grams of shrooms, and I remember what they looked like because I took a photo of them, and they were beautiful, actually. Truthfully, most of the shrooms I've eaten in my life were disgusting looking and tasting. These not only looked very cool, but they tasted phenomenal. I ate them all. I started to trip very, very, very hard. But as you will know, if you're not a schizophrenic, when you're tripping, you can it's not, people think it's like, oh, you're losing your mind. No, you can still see and tell the difference, almost not fully, but mostly, between reality and fantasy. And like, usually if you see one thing, it'll switch to another, which is we're going to play in later. So for another 2 hours goes by, and I'm blasting my music. The speaker dies. I'm tripping so hard. I just grab my truck keys, go out to my truck, turn the engine on, and sit there and trip in my truck with the heat on. Because mind you, it's late in March, early April, and I am tripping balls. I look in the rearview mirror instinctively because I'm tripping, and I'm not paranoid, but I paranoid at the time. And I begin to notice a pair of white eyes. And this is the first time I saw the eyes. I, at the time, wrote it off as part of my shroom trip, but it was still kind of strange because I saw the same pair of eyes just like waving around and moving around behind me in a very inhumane, weird, and strange manner. And I could see it looked like the Rake. It looked like what the pictures are on Creepypasta. And obviously, when you're tripping on shrooms, you'll start seeing things, but I was seeing like the patterns around it, meaning like I was seeing it then and there. It wasn't going away, meaning that whatever I saw there was indeed there. And so because I'm tripping balls, I'm thinking I'm trying to write it off as a hallucination. And I forget about it for about 2 weeks after the trip is over. Eventually, it just darted off, and at one point, it just darted away randomly. About 2 weeks later, I was stoned again. I actually ate the marijuana this time, so I was so stoned I was laughing at nothing. And I was zooming in on all my photos on Instagram that I had taken. And I zoomed in on the photo of my truck, and I noticed something. And if you want to, I actually took screenshots of it and zoomed in on it. But what I did was I basically zoomed in, screenshotted it, zoomed in again, and screenshotted it. This is where it gets weird. When I took that photo that night, you can clear as day see what looks to be the Rake, and I can swear on everything that I fucking love. I'm not making this video for attention. I'm trying to tell people to be careful because these things are more real than you think they are. I have these photos on my Instagram. If you want to look at it, my Instagram is, and I quote, no numbers, underscores, or any no exclamation points, none of that shit. It's just King Shane is God. That's it. And you'll see my profile picture is a picture of me with next to a 90s Bills helmet. So right then and there, I was convinced that that thing was real. Now, here's where it gets real odd. After that week passed, I had, so basically in between the trip and me seeing it and me realizing it was actually really 100% there because I had a photo of it. In between that was the April 8th, 2024 solar eclipse. And when the sky during the middle of the day got dark, but not completely dark, but pretty damn dark, when it came back in the span of about 20 minutes in the city that I live in and will probably never leave for the rest of my life, and neither has my father or any of my Polish ancestors, I was truly convinced that God is real. And I thought that the photos were good before they got even better. So after I realized it was real, I never went back on my belief, and I don't believe in them, I don't worship them, but I acknowledge their presence. So I never have gone back since. About a week afterwards, I was drinking with my buddy in the hotel, and he was drunk, so was I. We started to argue, and he locked me out of my room. And I decided, because he locked me out of the room, to be a dramatic little piss pot and wander into the woods by myself, which turned out to be a fucking mistake because it was night again. I was walking, and I just had the feeling. I just had the feeling that I was gonna see it, and sure enough, I did. And I did not just see one. This time, I saw 4 of them, and they're very weird because if you don't believe in them, they'll reveal themselves in the form of animals, in the form of people you know or have known or have since deceased. These things, let me tell you now that we're getting this far into this and it's getting real. These things can mimic your voice. They can mimic anyone you know's voice. They can mimic a screaming child, a screaming woman, a screaming man. They can also mimic, they've been known to mimic, your deceased relatives or people you used to care about who have passed away. They can do that too. It's fucking terrifying. And I know now, I'm going to tell you another story even further down the line here, that they can mimic sounds too, like sound effects. I mean, they're evil. And now that I'm getting this far, don't ever trust them, because they are evil, but you have to be careful around them. Because I realize now that if you want to leave their vicinity, there's 2 things you have to do and keep in mind. One, just like with an Ouija board, you have to ask to leave. Because if you don't, they literally suck you mentally in. I learned. So in this particular instance, I see 4 of them, and the 3 pair of white glowing eyes are further behind the one in front, and the one in front I can see clear as day. It almost looks like an alien. It's kind of weird. And like I'm talking to it before I asked it to leave, and it just like it's like nodding at me, but it's nodding super, super slowly. Now, if you think about it, same with humans. Usually the people who are the most calm tend to be the most dangerous. And the same goes for these things. They're so timid that you know that when they strike, and they'll kill you. Now here's another thing with that in mind. If you, big tip, when you are walking away, you mustn't run. You must walk, because they've been known to hate running for some reason. I don't know why, but they will chase you and kill you if you run. Now what's real creepy about this is because I was absolutely drunk too. I was understandably stumbling over my own feet. And what's real creepy is I heard all of them laughing. They started to laugh. It was kind of funny, but not really. I made it back to my hotel room. I sat there for a long time afterwards, and finally my buddy answered the door. And I fucking grabbed my key and kicked him out because I was pissed. That was that one. We're getting kind of towards the end here. The third or second to last time. The third to last time I experienced these things, I took a half a gram dab, which I was coughing for an hour. I greened out. I went out to my truck. I was so high and coughing, I was foaming at the mouth. And I started to see them coming out of the woods towards me. And it wasn't a hallucination. I mean, it was quite clearly something that was planted on the ground with the glow, and it was telltale glowing white eyes. What's real crazy is I was so stoned, my heart was starting to palpitate, meaning skip beats. And it was kind of funny. They went from like concerned faces to like very evil, like menacing, like, haha, you're gonna die kind of faces. It was almost sick. And because I was coughing so much, my buddy, right before my buddy came back out to check on me, I seen them all dart away. And as soon as they vanished, the door opened to his room, which I was sitting right in front of in my truck, and he came over and asked me if I was all right, which is kind of cool but crazy. The last time I saw them in their physical form was, I'd say, about a month and a half ago. I got Actually, no, I didn't. No, no, no. At this particular time, I actually wasn't inebriated at all, which solidified this shit for me. I am in a relationship, and I got frustrated the one day and was legitimately not just, saying it just because I wanted to catch anyone's attention, but I was legitimately thinking about killing myself. And I didn't take my car. I walked. I walked out of where I live and down the road. Now, here's a little detail that will make this story even weirder and just scare the shit out of you if you're listening. The entire time of what I'm about to explain to you, not a single car passed me on the way there or back or when I sat down. So I started to walk, and there was woods on either side of this road. And I started to see them. And when I say see them, I'm talking about not one, not zero, not four, but hundreds. I counted by the end of this whole experience. They were everywhere. And before I started to see them, I did indeed hear a whistling from the woods. I started to hear a whistling, and I knew immediately. As soon as I heard the whistle, I knew it. I knew what was about to happen. So I started to see them after the whistle everywhere. Some of them, what's real creepy about it is some of them are our height, some of them are like short, like midget size. Some of these things can stand about 11, 12 feet tall or even taller. The one I saw before I reached the edge of the woods before the lights were back was pretty damn tall. They are notorious for being very silent when they're close to you. So even though I saw them, and what they also like to do, which you better be careful of, if you start feeling comfortable around them, you have to leave, because that's what they do. They want to draw you in. It's fucking crazy. Their ultimate goal is to cause psychological terror. They want you to kill yourself. That's what they want you to do, because they're evil energies. So I sat on the guardrail on the road for about a straight half hour. And at one point, it was just like, enough, I'm done sitting here. So I stood up, and because I had seen so many already, I instinctively looked behind me, and I almost jumped out of my skin, because there was one literally standing right behind me, directly behind me, and it made no sound the entire time. Creepy. As I'm walking back, I see a ton of them, and they're all in different areas doing different things. At one point, I saw two of them holding each other, which was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. And I made it back to my house alive again, and I started to count. I lost count at the 100 mark. I said, okay, enough. There's 100 plus out there. And that's how you know. The last time I experienced something truly odd outside of a dream state was me and the buddy who I mentioned who locked me out of my room decided to smoke some weed very close to where I live, but not right where I live. And we're high, stoned as shit. And all of a sudden, I hear what sounds to me like a football hitting the ground. And I look at my buddy and I said, "Did you hear that?" And he goes, "I did." So we both are looking around, skits the fuck out because we think, someone's out there in the dark doing something fucking weird with a football. Now, here's something creepy. These things, if you get past the whispering and the mocking and the voices, they'll even go as far as to mock things that you like. So I'm looking at the direction that the football came from, and it sounded like the football hit the pavement. Now, down that road, we saw nothing. Nothing. Not a person, not a ball, nothing. And so I was like, all right, here we go again. But nothing actually happened that time. Oh, here's another one, actually. We're going to go back in time a little bit. When I did come into this money that I received under horrifically unfortunate circumstances, which is fucking annoying, but not. It's fucking crazy. The way that life makes you feel sometimes. I took a trip to New York City with one of my other friends, who I'm the closest with out of any human I've ever met, besides women. Obviously, I've obviously liked women more, because that's weird to say to like a dude. I don't think that's right. But we were driving through none other than rural New York. Because think about it, if you're gonna get from Buffalo, New York, to New York City, you have to drive through New York State. It was dark at this point, and me and my buddy were talking about these things and kind of laughing about them, as per usual. Everyone does that. He freaks the fuck out of nowhere and goes, "I seen him, bro." And I was like, what are you talking about?" He goes, "I seen the eyes." And I asked him, because he's a realist, I asked him upwards of 30 times to deny it for me, to tell me in person that what he saw was indeed what he saw. And he said yes. I then proceeded to ask him a very vital question. I said, "When you saw these eyes, were they illuminated by my headlights, or were they on the side?" And he said, "On the side." Meaning that the eyes were glowing. So when other people have seen and heard it, especially like that was the one that was like, whoa. It wasn't even that I didn't believe in it. It was that I was like, oh my fucking God. That was another one. At least I was in, well, I mean, yeah, at least I was in the truck on my way for a good vacation. But, damn. The last scary thing I can tell all of y'all is the one day I got very mad at my girlfriend, and I blocked her on everything. And I decided to fall asleep without a care in my soul. A legitimate lack of caring. And when I fell asleep, I woke up in my dream. I had fallen asleep during the day, which is weird. I woke up in my dream in a cornfield, laying on a beach towel. It was like I had teleported from a beach during the day to a farm field at nighttime. It was weird as fuck. But what's even weirder is I, in the dream, turned around. Now, I've experienced fear. Everyone knows that, like, let's say you hear a gunshot or someone scares you, you hear a loud noise, you get that jolt of fear. Well, when I turned around, in my dream, I locked eyes with a pair of glowing eyes, and an instant a jolt of pure fear that I've never experienced while I was awake or in a dream went down my spine in my own dream, and I couldn't look away. And it said, and I quote, "Shane, where are you?" And I fucking shot awake, and there was thunder. Now, I honestly thought that, like, and this is going to sound delusional, I honestly thought that where I live, a plane crashed because of how loud this thunder was and because it had woke me up. And I laid there just hyperventilating, like, them dreams, you just hyperventilate, breathing heavy. And I listened and I heard the thunder crack again. And then I was like, okay, well, at least it was thunder. But besides the point, just that's crazy, man. And when I had woken up, I had seen that my girl had messaged me from a new phone number. So I don't know what to say about like it trying to connect me with my relationship, but like that was, if you think about it, that was really creepy. Like that was eerie, honestly. That was something. Um, and that's all I got. I'll add one more thing here. When I was actually two more stories. When I was a child, my mother had a stroke because, listen, my mom in 1999, 2 years before I was even born, had to have an artificial heart valve put in, which at the time was a new. So she was lucky, but she was a fighter anyway. My mom was a fighter till the very fucking end. God damn. But she had an artificial heart valve put in, and the doctors at her her heart doctor made a stupid ass mistake with her blood thinners. She couldn't have thick blood, or she would clot and have strokes, and that's exactly what happened. So I was thrown into foster care while my mother was in the hospital, which because she was a single mom. So where else was I going to go? As a 9-year-old, I was 9. The first foster family they stuck me with was horrific because listen to this. They had a younger daughter. I mean, I wouldn't say younger. We were basically the same age. I was 9 and she was 7. And we had to sleep in the same room. So she would always tell me that she had an imaginary friend, quote unquote. And I was a child. I thought it was fucking hilarious. But looking back on it, it's utterly terrifying when I get deeper into the story. So there was a mom, a dad, an older brother, me technically being the younger brother, and the younger sister. All of them were related. I wasn't related to them. But blood is always, or family is always more than blood, and that's been proven many times throughout history. But they were not. But it was. I understood it because I couldn't explain myself as a child. I didn't know what was going on. So the first person to leave for school was the daughter. The second person to leave the house in the morning was the son for work. The mother and father would also leave for work, and these are how irresponsible they were. I was left to wait for the bus by myself. So I was always the last one to leave this house. Now, these people had a black cat, and I would leave the house, and I'd come back, and they would ask me, well, actually, the first 2 times it happened, they didn't ask me, because they were not trying to assume that their newly adopted child was doing this, because I wasn't. This cat would always be locked in the cupboard when the parents would come home, because they came home before we got back from school. It would be locked in the green cupboard every time. And towards the end, it happened every day. Towards the end, they kicked me out because they were convinced, because I was the last one leaving the house, that I was the one that was putting the cat in the cupboard. And that's why it horrifies me, because I wasn't. And I know I wasn't. The last thing I'll say that happened to me as far as creepy paranormal shit is one time I was at one of my, not girlfriend, but girlfriend's house. And we were having basically a play date because we were children. And we're sitting there talking shit about spirits, believe it or not, talking shit about the belief in ghosts and shit. And out of nowhere, the light starts to flicker, and the girls scream, but the dudes are like, what the fuck? Because that's how it usually goes anyways. But the girls are screaming, so we're trying to calm them down. In the process of calming them down, the fan that was running just shuts off out of nowhere. The electricity didn't die. It was fucking switched off right in front of us. Unbelievably terrifying. But you know what I'm going to do? Is reiterate that just because these things exist does not mean that you have to like them. It does not mean that you need to obsess over them. There's a difference between obsessing and realization and cautiousness. Major difference. So what I'll say is, don't go out in the woods. If you're an ignorant son of a bitch who does not have gifts, let me just put it that way, do not go in the woods at night alone. You will die. Or you will experience something that will shatter your soul if you're not the right person. Because this kind of stuff is not for the faint of mind. And I'll just say that. This is an hour and 12-minute video. If you listened honestly, thank you. You're real. You are not stupid. And you can realize that there are good and evils in the world. So with that, I will leave that there.